What's up, 11ty-lifers? Welcome to this week's episode of 11ty-life. For those of you who are new to the show, my name is Matt. I play in a band called 11tyseven. This podcast is all about life through the lens of my band. Lots of conversations with people in the music industry, lots of conversations about faith and life and love and creativity and where it all comes from and different things that are going on in our world right now socially. We're all just trying to figure it out. This podcast sort of started out as a way of chronicling our history into and out of the Christian music industry and what that looked like for us and how our faith has changed and what we believe now and what we don't believe anymore. It's a deep dive into the how and why we make records. And I know that we have a bunch of people that listen to the podcast who are creatives, you are musicians, you play in bands. You have seen our band at some point. And I like to think that we're all in this together. We're all trying to create art that somehow explains or chronicles our journey through this thing called the human experience. Today on the show, we're going to do something really fun. I've been getting a few requests of people to do some track-by-track dives into some of the songs off of Rad Science, but not just talking about where the songs come from, actually diving into the sessions themselves. What are the sounds? What are the tracks that make up these songs from the ground up? As a producer, this is one of my favorite things to do. My life pretty much revolves around tracks and looking at Pro Tools, looking at waveforms on a screen all day, every day. And for any of you out there who record your own material, you know that this can be a maddening thing. It's kind of like taking the red pill in the Matrix. You start to see the code. You start to have a really hard time listening to just songs on the radio. When you hear songs on the radio, you see them in your mind as waveforms, and you almost sort of translate what's happening audibly into something that you can see and touch and manipulate in whatever program that you're used to recording in. So today on 11ty-life, we're going to get into what 11ty-seven looks like on a very microscopic level sonically. So what I'm going to do to start this off so that everybody has the same bass line to work with, I'm actually going to play a song called New Rock Bottom from our brand new album, Rad Science. If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard this song already. It was one of the first ones that we released from this album. It was the first track that we had released in, probably 6-7 years as 11ty-seven, and it kind of represented historically where our band had been sonically and where we sort of wanted to take it. And it also has a lot of really fun sort of punk rock energy to it. It's kind of a headbanger. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and play the track now so that we all have a bass line to listen to. And then after the track is over, we will start to break it down into what this thing looks like in the computer, what it sounds like when you solo all these different instruments that are happening at one time. So without further ado, here is New Rock Bottom from our new album, Rad Science.
That is not gone bad when I hand it up to you.
something you've never seen me care so little. 'Cause I'm a dot in the wall cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. So answer the call. Become friends with the There you go. So the song sort of starts off with this mixture of synthesizers and guitar. Here's what these things sound like. Here's what the intro of the song sounds like on a track by track basis. So these synthesizers that open up the beginning of the song sound like this. So those are what the synthesizers sound like. There's actually 4 synthesizers happening at one time here. So I've layered these first 2, and then I layered some more synthesizers on top of those that sound a little bit meatier. I'll let you listen to those. Okay, cool. So all together, that big wall of synthesizers has this effect. So the idea was kind of to make them mimic what the guitar line was doing. I think these synthesizers sound way tougher than the actual guitars on the song. I'm going to solo the intro guitars for you right now so you can kind of hear what's happening over top of those synthesizers in the intro. Okay, cool. So that's the intro guitar 1. And then I layered those guitars with something playing the same guitar part, but with a tone that was a little bit heavier, a little more heavy metal. So here's what that sounds like. Okay, so the guitars together now sound like... Okay. And so if we were to solo the guitars and the synthesizers together, then we sort of get this big wall of nastiness. Cool. So that's the intro to the song. That was really fun. A lot of times just getting an intro that feels tough or that feels melodic or that kind of gets you excited about what's going to happen in the rest of the song is what, gosh, I would assume most forms of music are going for. I really want to create these moments where you sort of feel these really tough sort of tones happening and sounds happening, and it makes you want to just roll the window down in your car and just crank it because you know something fun is about to happen. So once that intro is done, it kind of kicks on into the drums. And here's what some raw drums sound like on this track, New Rock Bottom. And then if I add guitars, cool. So when we get to this section, there's another guitar that gets added. So in addition to these rhythm guitars playing that you heard in the intro, those are just still going. You also get these fun little guitar parts down here. Cool. So that would be the pre-chorus of the song, and that's what's happening with the guitars there. When we play the guitars and we throw the drums in there, you get this. So the one thing you probably have not heard yet is Davey. And Davey is playing pretty much the entire song, kind of doubling what the guitars are doing. I'm going to solo for you now what Davey's guitar sounded like when we tracked it. So this is like unmixed, unfiltered, just guitar of Davey starting at the intro. Cool. And then going into the verse. And then he pauses right there, right before we go into the chorus. I really want to mention right now that I know that there are a lot of people listening who you're making your own records and you're listening to this podcast and to this episode probably specifically to kind of hear a little bit of nerd talk about gear and about tracking and stuff. I'm going to try to stay away from a lot of the nerd talk, but I will say this. I think Davey has an amazing bass tone, and I'm really, really happy with what we got out of that. There's ways to make that sound more aggressive. You know, there's different things that you can do with it in the mix. I do want to point out that a lot of the, some of the gear that we use on the 11D records can get really expensive or maybe pricey. This is not one of them. We are literally using an off-the-shelf P bass, Fender P bass that I think we took the stock pickups out of and replaced them with bass lines, this other type of pickup called a bass line. It's a little bit better quality than the stuff that normally comes in all the Fender stock basses. We do that every time that we ever purchased a bass in the band or had a bass player in the band. We would always have them replace their stock pickups with this because it's like, for whatever reason, these pickups, they have more clarity, more definition, they track better, they sound better on an album. So we're literally running that through a really inexpensive piece of gear called a SansAmp. It is just a tiny pedal that adds some EQ and some dirt and some overdrive to the bass. Yeah, I mean, we literally just tracked it that way. None of this stuff is super, super expensive. It's really cheap. I think the bass cost like $500, which is like typical for an entry-level bass for somebody who knows how to play bass or is gigging. And that pedal that we ran it through was $100. So I think it's a pretty dang sweet bass tone for $600. And if you're out there blowing thousands of dollars on that perfect bass tone, dial it back. There's better things to spend money on. So heading into the chorus, I think that this might be a good time to solo some of the vocal parts that are happening. So if you are a fan of 11D or you have listened to a bunch of our records, you know that there are hardly any songs that we have that are just one vocal track of me singing. I'm a really big fan of layering. I'm a really big fan of the Haas effect. It's basically playing or singing or performing the same thing twice. Like, let's just say, for instance, I sing a vocal line. I'll sing that exact same vocal line and try to sing it as close to the original take as I possibly can. And it has this really cool sort of thickening effect that maybe I'll be able to point out for you here. So heading into the chorus, this is what my raw, just like one line of vocals would sound like. 'Cause I'm a dyed-in-the-wall cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. So I can tell that I was pushing really, really hard in that take to try to get it to feel aggressive, to try to get my voice to match the aggression of the track. Here's what happens when I add myself singing over top of me again. It kind of has this cool silkening effect on the vocal. 'Cause I'm a dyed-in-the-wall cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. Yep. And so I normally don't stop there either. I'll keep layering it until it sounds like a choir of elves, or so I've heard on the internet. That I sound like a choir of elves. So here you go, elf choir. 'Cause I'm a dyed-in-the-wall cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. Yeah, so typically in 11D choruses, I mean, we throw copious amounts of vocal tracks. over top of it. And so if I add these harmonies in here that you can obviously hear in the track or in the finalized version of it, then this is what the raw vocals for the chorus sound like all the way through.
'Cause I'm a dyed-in-the-wool cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. So answer the call, become friends with the fall.
Cool. Here are the keys that are happening over top of that too. So if you were to just hear my vocals and the keys, and let's throw Davey's bass in there too. That's kind of fun.
I'm a dyed-in-the-wool cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. So answer the call, become.
Yep. And then there's this little alarm, a little alarm synthesizer that goes off right here.
So answer the call, become friends with the fall.
Okay, cool. So if I throw all the guitars in there now, then we get this.
So answer the call, become friends with the fall.
And so that obviously doesn't sound nearly as powerful without drums. So if I throw the drums in there now, then we head into this chorus and you can hear all of it working together.
'Cause I'm a dyed-in-the-wool cynic. There's a new rock bottom, and I'm gonna hit it. So answer the call, become friends with the fall.
Cool. Yeah, those drums are pretty hot. This is the unmixed version of the song, so I can tell where I left the session before I send it to the mix guy, what I was working on or what I was focusing on at the time. So actually, when we head back into this second verse here, our friend Mike, gosh, he did an amazing job with these drums. I don't know if we've ever had drum parts that were this fast before in an 11D song. I'm going to try to dial those up for you. So we're coming out of the first chorus and into the second verse. Everything sort of drops out. We wanted it to we wanted to give ourselves somewhere to go later in the song. So after we get done with this first chorus, we sort of head into a stripped down verse 2, and the drums on that kind of sound like this. Cool. Gosh, Mike is so good. I love him. So here's what that sounds like with Davey's bass going into it as well. So Davey kind of follows what Mike is doing with the drums. So in the pre-choruses, we have the guitars kind of helping everything crescendo into the chorus. The guitar parts that you might hear that might be a little bit buried in the mix on the master version are these guys happening here, and this is the pre-chorus going into the second chorus. Cool. So it sounds like a really simple thing, but then when you add the other rhythm guitars over top of it, it actually ends up sounding kind of fun. I'm going to throw some of the keys on there too. I almost forgot about that little guitar bit right there. I'm going to see if I can find it because that sounds so much fun. Yeah. Whenever we're tracking guitars in the studio, adding those little harmonics or little chickas, as we call them, or just kind of playing your amp, like throwing some little messy bits in there. Gosh, it just makes it feel so much more fun. It makes it feel like you're in a practice room or like you're in the practice room with the band. We always loved that kind of stuff. The pad that's happening in the chorus, I believe I was using, or I got straight up from a a program or from a software synthesizer called Massive. And it has these really, really cool voices inside of it that you can use. This is what the pad sounds like in the chorus. It's happening over top of everything. I'm a really big fan of angelic choir sounds. I don't know why, it just kind of takes me somewhere. And I think I was thinking, like, lyrically, I sort of wanted this chorus to feel very anthemic and very, very much like a don't give up sort of a vibe to it, because the song is basically lyrically admitting how cynical of a person I am. And I think I always, at the end of my cynicism, I always get to this question, which is, well, now what? I mean, I still have to live. I still have to do something. And this song is sort of about becoming friends with your cynicism and using it for good instead of for evil, for the depressive things that we so often use our cynicism for. So... So at the end of the second chorus, we come to the bridge. And the bridge is one of my favorite parts because everything has a chance to breathe. Everything has a chance to sort of go back to normal or to reset the sound stage, I guess, as it is. So coming out of the bridge, we have the guitars and the bass sort of hitting these notes here. And then they swell back up into one of my favorite synth parts in the song. And I'm going to solo that for you right now. So there are a few keys that are happening here simultaneously. I'll play you the first of them, which is this pad. Just really simple, hardly changing any notes at all. The note changing is left up to these guys down here. I'll play you this first one. I'm pretty sure that is a really simple sound that I just made in Massive. And then underneath it is this guy. Oh my gosh. It sounds so simple, but there's something about that really grindy sort of sawtooth wave bass sound that just gets my blood going. So together, these two guys sound like this. And then if I throw the pad on top of there, that was pretty fun. Then we head straight into this part of the chorus where my vocals come in, and it's basically business as usual, and the band is going to town on some power chords. So yeah.
The doors might be locked, but I won't let it stop me from leaving.
Oh yeah, and we have these little guys down here, just kind of a choir of about 8 of me singing "Whoa, Whoa." So in the background, we have these guys. Yep.
And I've got a glass half empty, but that won't stop me from drinking. So just you wait for the next big something. You've never seen me care so little. 'Cause I'm a dyed-in-the-wool cynic. If there's a new rock bottom, then I'm gonna hit it. So answer the call. Become friends with the fall.
So that's kind of fun. I really love putting 3 and sometimes 4-part harmony over top of stuff, because normally in a lot of punk sounding or pop punk sounding stuff, I feel like the guitars oftentimes sort of take the main road and sort of take up most of the space. And I really like the idea of blending a bunch of voices together and harmonizing and maybe it's just like my Southern gospel roots, but I always feel like there's room for another harmony somewhere. I think I got really lucky on this song that it all kind of worked together. So let's take a minute and just go through the last 10 seconds of this song, starting with the drums. It's kind of business as usual. Mike is killing it. Add a little guitar. More guitar. Davey. Cool. And then throw some keys in there and some vocals, and you have a final chorus.
'Cause I'm a die in the wall snake. There's a new rock bottom and I'm yawning. So answer the call. Become friends with the fall.
Awesome. And that is New Rock Bottom. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us on this episode of 11 Life. This was so much fun. If you have a song from Rad Science that you want us to dissect, just like this, take it apart, hear all the different sounds by themselves, hear everything in solo, and how they all come together to create these songs. I am the biggest fan of pop music. My life revolves around production. I stare at screens all day because I love making songs. I love writing songs, and I love this process. If you're listening right now, you probably love it too. And if you don't, you're at least vaguely interested. Yeah, this was really fun. If you have a song that you want us to dissect like this, go ahead and let us know what it is on Twitter. You can get us at 11dyrock, hashtag 11dylife. We're always on there. You can hit us up on Facebook and send us a message. Thank you to everybody who is supporting the podcast. Hey, if you're thinking to yourself, I really want to support what 11tyseven is doing right now, but I am broke as hell, that is totally fine. You can go to wherever you got this podcast and write us a review. We love getting iTunes reviews for the podcast. They help us out so much. If you loved it, if you hated it, it doesn't matter. We need to hear the bad feedback just as much as we need to hear the good feedback. Check out our online store. We do everything that we can to keep ads off of the podcast because we don't want to waste your time selling you a bunch of stuff that you probably don't need anyway. Which I kind of find ironic now that I'm going to direct you to our online store that's full of shit you probably don't need. But if you really like our band, if you really enjoy this music, if you enjoy this podcast, the best and quickest way to support it is going to the Rock Candy Recordings online store, pick up a t-shirt, pick up a hoodie, pick up some music, some stickers, whatever it is. We encourage you to do that. It helps us fund all of these different things. It helps us fund these projects. It enables us to keep making the 11 Life podcast. And so far, you guys have been amazingly generous in your support for what we do, and we cannot thank you enough for it. We are living the dream right now because of you and because of your kindness. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of 11 Life. We cannot wait to see you next week. Goodbye.
11 Life is a production of Rock Candy Recordings and Rock Candy